Okay, so this is going to be a video on ascending sets and how we can use an ascending set and why to use ascending set. And we are going to see a case study on a lifter that I coach, how I used ascending sets to really help her with that training and the rationale behind really using ascending sets and how it helped us. So so first of all, what is ascending set? So ascending sets are basically when we use the same rep range and get higher in weight. Meaning if you are doing three sets of three in straight sets, so if you are doing three sets of three in 100 kgs, an ascending set approach would be doing a one set of three at 90, another set of three at 97.5, and the third set of three at 105. So that would basically keep the average intensities relatively similar. Uh, I mean, don't quote me on the maths over here, but I just gave an example. Usually it is the same rep range that people use, so keeping the reps same, just adding maybe 5 kgs or 2.5 or whatever the jump they want to take, and keeping the reps same. Some people might reduce the reps going higher in weight, but that's not what generally ascending sets really mean. So that was about ascending sets and what really are they. So why would we use ascending sets really and in powerlifting? So number one thing would be to get better training quality. So if if there is a lifter in a case where there is a lifter where they really don't nail their technique really well, they really are kind of off with their technique in the sets, getting an ascending set approach would really benefit them, because it's not a case where they're taking a last warm up of say 10 kgs less than their top set and then they're hitting their top set. They might not really be ready to take their top set. So getting those ascending set really would enhance their training quality, and it does help a lot with overall bettering overall technique. The second reason would be to better gauge RP. So if there is a lifter, or if ourselves, for example, we are not really able to gauge the RPE of set, so it could be falling into the spectrum of chronic undershooters, and it could also go um, to the spectrum of chronic overshooters. So the lifters who really do not well manage how the prescribed RPE, so they kind of miss the prescribed RPE. They either underdo it or overdo it. An ascending set would be really better because, for example, the first ascending set would generally be a lighter set, but they're not using a last warm up kind of approach where the last warm up is really further away from the top set, and they're not then really not training in the same rep range of the top set. So they're generally speaking taking a single as their last warm up. But if they're doing the same reps for a lighter weight than the second set and the third set, it would really help them understand that what kind of weight they should say, like really take in the second set, and then going into the third set. If we are using 3 ascending sets, that would be the approach. So the RPEs are gauged much better when ascending sets are used, and the third reason would be to get higher average intensity. I mean, obviously that's a given, because if you are using ascending sets, you're going up in weights each set, so the difficulty of each set would be slightly higher, because obviously there is a fatigue cost coming from the initial ascending sets, but that may not be always the case, and we are going to talk about that later on. So coming from why to use ascending sets, like, we should really discuss that who really benefits from ascending sets. So the first type of lifter, and this is a given, and the type of lifter who has really high work capacity, so they can do a lot of work, they can do a lot of volume in a session, and they do not disproportionately fatigue after a certain RPE. So this is very important because we don't want to program ascending sets for the kind of lifters who like they hit a RPE 7 triple and they're like really fatigued after that, and then the back downs they have to really drop the percentages to really perform their back downs because they're really beat down after doing a RPE 7 triple. So you don't want to definitely program ascending sets for lifters like these because obviously they're not going to be even if you are programming two ascending sets, they're probably going to be disproportionately fatiguing in their second ascending set. So definitely lifters with high work capacity and do not fatigue after hitting a certain RPE, those kind of lifters will really benefit from ascending sets. And so the second thing is something which I noticed in my lifters and really found a lot of success programming ascending sets for them is the type of lifters who always say, I program them top set and back downs, and they always say the top set. More often than not, they say the top sets where it was shaky, something went off, the center of mass was not managed, but back downs felt better. That's something which kind of shows the indication that maybe an ascending set approach would be good in such scenarios. The third, I think, chronic undershooters, we discussed this. So obviously people who cannot gauge RPE very well, it's going to help them. Ascending set approach is really going to help them really get the required training intensity they really need out of a session. And the fourth point would really be people who are really sensitive to absolute loads, and this comes in hand with increasing average intensity. So you want to program ascending sets for lifters who really do not handle intensity really well. So higher absolute loads means the absolute load on the bar. So if you have lifters who are, you might coach or train someone who really do not handle higher weight, so the absolute weight of the bar really well, they really get beat down by it. An ascending set would be a good approach because obviously it really helps, we talked about it, it really helps increasing the average difficulty of the session, so higher average intensity without really getting that much load on the bar in the subsequent sets. So these were the reasons and the benefits of why and how someone would benefit from ascending sets. So now we're going to see a case study, and this is one of my lifters who I program ascending sets for. And the lifter profile I'm just going to say is she's very sensitive to intensity. So whenever I try to peak her for a competition and I use singles, it really didn't work really well for her. She really is very, very sensitive to the absolute load of the bar, and we're talking about deadlifts. So for this specific case study, we're talking about deadlifts. So whenever we went higher than a specific percentage in absolute load, we faced a lot of issues, and it ultimately ended up really in low back pain, in some kind of injury for her, which didn't take too much to recover from, but we were really struggling to find predictable training with higher absolute loads on the bar. And but she's very well leveraged for deadlifts, so leverages are very good for deadlifts, and the work capacity and the point that she's very good at handling volume holds true here. So she's very good in handling work capacity, and she does not fatigue after doing like a certain RPE. She just gets beat down when we get a specific absolute load on the bar. So that's the lifter profile. So I'm just going to show now the approach I used to take. So this is basically the approach we used to take. So this is going to be conventional deadlifts. So her primary had 4 sets, and we started off like this block with a double and 3 triples as a back down. This was really, we're trying to peak her into a meet, and I'm using doubles here as a top set, and this was like training for a meet. We are training into a meet. So she was doing similar intensities and rep ranges one block prior as well. So I'm just going to use this example. So we can see the top set double on week 1 is 127.5, and it moves at a 5 RP. It's same like as given in the prescribed RP cap. It's the same. So far so good in week 1, and then week 2 rolls around and we can already see some kind of discrepancy and some kind of fatigue kicking in already, because the prescribed top set is 132.5, and that she took it for a double, and she's already overshot by 1 RPE. So it was 7 RPE for the top set, and then we had 3 into 3 for 115. And we can really see, like we talked about before, we can really see her sets average, the RPEs becoming better as we progress in the set. So 7 RPE top set, then the same load for 3 sets, the third set being feeling the easiest. So this is 5.5 RPE, and the first set in 115 was 6.5 RPE. So we are already seeing signs that as the training goes on, as the session goes on, as she starts doing the sets, as the lifter starts doing the sets actually become progressively easier, which we usually think that the last set would feel the hardest, but the last set is actually the easiest, and technically it was the best set. For all the sessions, the last set was always the best set that she did, and this is really a sign where ascending sets can really help a lot, because if the last set is always the best set in every training session, that really means that the lifter is not ready to perform the top set. They really need time and more work done before than performing their top set. So week 3 rolls around, it's the top set is good this time, but the back down still is overshot a little bit. But this is better than week 2, what we imagined. So it's still under the prescribed RP that we imagined, but we can see the last set again being the best set, because this is 5.5 RP and the same load a set before was 6 RP. So we can see that predictability coming in. And week 4, and this is something which really tells us that the intensity is a problem for this lifter. So we can see that we went from 137 to 142 for a double, and it came around 9 RP. It was a really grindy set, and coming down the back downs, it again was really overshot. It shouldn't be a 7 RP triple, but it became like 8.5 RP. It came out as 8.5 RP. So this was a really intense session, and again we can see the last set being the best set with 120 at a 7.5 RP. But really this shows that after a certain point, the fatigue starts to kick in session after session. So I decided to program ascending sets for her, keeping the volume relatively the same, overall volume relatively the same, but I thought about, we really figured out that 3 ascending sets in her deadlifts would really help her, and we're going to see how that really helps. So we switched from 4 sets to 3 sets, but we did sets of 4. So this is basically to reduce the absolute load on the bar, because she was doing doubles and triples. Now she's doing 3 sets of 4, which is relatively overall the same number of reps. If you see 3 triples, 1 double is 11 reps, and 3 sets of 4 is 12 reps. So the rep count is relatively the same, but the absolute load on the bar will be less. So this really allowed us to start lower. So we can start with really low absolute load on the bar, and this was 112.5, 117.5, and 120 for week 1, and it went really good. The Again, you can really see the second set is literally the same RPE. In the first week went up 5 kgs, but the RPE remains same. That just shows that the lifter really needs some amount of work done before reaching their desired RPE for that session. So week 1 went good, and then we rolled around week 2, and yeah, so we had 115, 120, and 125 for sets of 4, and 125 went for a RP 5.5, which we really thought would move around 6.5 RP. It moved around 5.5 RP. So really dialing in the technique worked really well over here, because the technique really was much better than the previous block, and we did 125 really in week 3 for a triple, and that went for a 6.5 RP, albeit after a kind of intense top set for her. But over here 125 was with much better technique, with much better speed after 2 ascending sets. So after that, moving on, we had week 3. So we did 120, 22.5, and 27.5, and it went exactly like we thought it would. Like, we programmed RP 5, 6, and 7. A lot of times people give at the rate RP 5, 6, and 7, but with lifters like this, it's difficult for them to judge. So I would like assign the load for them, like really calculate on my end and assign the load for them, rather than them and like figuring out what load they should take. I think that's a better approach to like get accuracy in the actual RP situation. So this week 3 went really well, and week 4 we did 122, 127, and 132. So this week should have been the last week in our session. In our block, we used to run 4-week blocks, but we can really see the benefits of ascending sets in this week, because she did 132.5 for her third ascending set at an RP 7, which really shows us how ascending set can really help us refining technique, because we were able to start really low in terms of absolute load. Over here we could get to week 4 really taking 132 for a set of 4, because the fatigue cost of week 1, week 2 is not really there like it was in the previous block we saw. So this is already a PR for her in week 4, and we decided to run it another week, so we extended to week 5, and then in week 5 we took 122 for 4, 130 for 4, and then ended up taking 140 for 4, and it came around 8 RP, which is a really successful block for us, because in the previous block we took 142 for a double, and that went really bad, really grindy, with not very good technique. But now at the end of week 5 we took 140 for 4 reps for 8 RP, which is all-time PR for her in reps. So this is basically a case study that really shows the benefit of ascending sets